There comes a time in life where you find yourself in a situation that you thought you would never be in. Hearing a diagnosis, the call of a car accident, burying a loved one. See, we go around life feeling like we're in control until we're faced with a situation that exposes our humanity. Look, I know I'm young, and I know there's people who have gone through a lot more than what I have. But over the last few years, I found myself in places I swore I would never be in. In October of 2016, my mom was diagnosed with ALS. When she told me, I knew what it was, and I knew what it did to people. I had just turned 23 when I found out that my mom only had years left to live, and how many was a mystery. My relationship with my mom has always been complicated, and for a while we didn't even really have a relationship. I felt like after all the steps I took to let her back into my life, I now had to start saying goodbye. I made a conscious decision to walk away from God. A combination of things not going my way, my constant need for control, and my own personal brokenness. I felt like I knew what was best for my life, and I couldn't get with a God who would allow this kind of suffering to take place. Crippled doesn't even begin to describe where I was at in life. I was paralyzed by not knowing my mom's life expectancy. I was tormented by not getting to dance with my mom at my wedding. My kids not being able to share in the memories that I wanted so bad for them, like my mom sneaking them candy when I wasn't looking or dishing them ice cream as I watched Jeopardy with them. I started to live in a place of isolation. I did my best to limit the pain, but things only seemed to get worse. Shortly after I found out my mom had ALS, my childhood best friend lost his brother. Everywhere I looked, I saw nothing but darkness. It didn't take long for me to get comfortable with where I was. I was hopeless, depressed, addicted, anxious, you name it. As time progressed, I only got worse. I sat in this for years as I watched my mom slowly deteriorate in front of my own eyes. My mom passed away in the summer of 2019, but only to be preceded by me losing one of my best friends, Sarah, in a car accident just weeks before. After everything I've walked through, I wanted to let you know that no matter how long your winter may seem right now, spring always shows up. It wasn't until the final months of my mom's life that I finally came to the conclusion that God was going to use all the hurt that I've sat in over the years and turn it into something greater. I found out that people relate to each other's pain a lot more than I thought. It's a large part of how I got to where I am today. It's easy to feel alone when we lose a loved one, especially unexpectedly. We often slap a time frame on people for when they're supposed to be over it by. I think it's healthy to go through a time when you're not okay, but when you go past the pain, I believe that there's something greater. Look, I love to say that I have all the answers to what you're going through, or why all those things happened the way that they did. And I love to say that walking with God will just make them all go away. But I've learned that the beauty of God is not the absence of problems, but the company of His presence in the middle of them. But little by little, I believe you can start to see the bigger picture of why some of these things happened the way that they did. None of this really makes any sense. I was depressed, traumatized, anxious, empty, broken, full of fear, and at times had no will to live anymore. I buried my mom, I buried my best friend, I've seen families break. I've seen so much pain in my life in the short time here on earth. But in that same thought, I also sit here talking about something so much greater than me, being able to sit in the middle of all this and proclaim with absolute certainty that God is still good. This is my story. I finally pulled the cover off the exterior that I've worked so hard to portray. I've learned that God will only heal as much as you give Him, so I decided to give Him all of it. For the first time in my life, I got comfortable being me, and with that came a freedom I never knew existed. It's ironic that a lot of the thoughts you're hearing now were written out of a place of doubt. I've learned that God doesn't want my perfection, but He just simply wants my heart. I want you to hear truth from a liar, hope from somebody who's given up. I've learned over the last few years that a lot of my greatest strides in purpose have often come out of my greatest pains. There's so many people that come to mind as I say these things. There's so many people I love who have lost children, friends that don't know who their parents are, people I care about that are sitting in a pool of uncertainty and fear, not knowing what's coming next. It's during these moments we often shake our fists at God, yelling out, "Why is this happening to me? Don't you love me? This isn't what it's supposed to look like." I've lived this, and from somebody who sat at rock bottom, I'm a living testimony that your story isn't finished yet. With that being said, this moment is one of the great honors of my life, so I'm happy to announce the release of my first book, The Bigger Picture. There's nothing I want more right now than to be able to share this with my mom and Sarah. I really wish they could see how far God's brought me. I wrote this with younger me in mind. For the one sitting in a pool of self-hatred as he watches mom slowly fade away in front of his eyes. The kid who tried every avenue to make himself feel better so he wouldn't have to address his own personal brokenness. This isn't a light read by any means, but I do think it's a necessary one. We love to hide our trauma and our issues from each other to promote a flawless version of ourselves that doesn't really exist. So I wanted to let people know that you're not the only one who's gone through something, and that what you went through doesn't define you, it's simply what happened to you. So in the middle of all my shortcomings, hypocrisy, and failures, I wanted to give someone hope as transparently as I know how. All the proceeds for this are going to families directly affected by ALS and the little boy that was sponsored in memory of my best friend Sarah. I know these aren't normal things to talk about, but it's my goal to portray that no matter how much you've done or how much you've been through, God still loves you, and I believe that your best days will always be ahead of you. So for now, I hope you all see my heart in this project, the bigger picture.